I'd like to welcome you all and also say welcome back to our panelists today. It's great to have you back here at the University of Michigan, and we are grateful to you for coming here and sharing your advice and expertise with us today. So we're looking forward to this conversation. And I'd like to introduce our panelists before we go ahead and get started with the conversation. Anne Casper earned her PhD in human genetics at Michigan in 2005. She is currently assistant professor of biology at Eastern Michigan University. And prior to joining the EMU faculty, she held a Spire postdoctoral fellowship at UNC Chapel Hill and was a visiting assistant professor at Shaw University in Raleigh, North Carolina. Her scholarship focuses on the causes and consequences of genomic instability, and she runs an NIH-funded research lab. Her most recent manuscript was published in the journal PLOS Genetics, PLOS, okay. She also collaborates on an NSF-funded project investigating teaching techniques in large introductory biology courses. Anne was an award nominee for the 2011 EMU Celebration of Student Success, and she was selected for an EMU Athletics Department 2010 Most Valuable Professor Award. Dyron Dabney earned his PhD at U of M in comparative politics in 2008. He is currently assistant professor of political science at Albion College, here in Albion, Michigan. His research and teaching interests include campaigns and elections in the US and Japan, with a focus on gender differences in political participation and behavior. Dyron has served as a member of the board of directors of the Asia Network, a consortium of colleges promoting Asia studies and the liberal arts, and is currently an advisory committee member for the Japan Study, a study abroad program linking US liberal arts colleges with Waseda University in Tokyo, where he recently completed a year as a visiting professor and director in residence. Dyron is a 2012-2014 Maureen and Mike Mansfield Foundation Scholar. And finally, Doug Rogers earned his PhD at Michigan in 2004, and he is currently associate professor of anthropology at Yale University. As a scholar, he has focused on ethnographic research in Russia, and he is currently working on an NSF-funded project focused on oil culture in post-Soviet Russia. Before joining the faculty at Yale, Doug taught at Miami University of Ohio. He has been a fellow at the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars in Washington, D.C., and at the Radcliffe Institute for Advanced Study at Harvard University. He is the author of The Old Faith and the Russian Land, a historical ethnography of ethics in the Urals, published by Cornell University Press in 2009. The book received honorable mentions for the 2010 Clifford Geertz Prize and the 2010 ASEES Davis Center Book Prize. So, welcome to you all. And I'd like to start off by getting a little sense of where you are now. So if you could tell us a little bit about your current institution, where you are now, and sort of what are the differences from being at U of M? And if you'd like to also reminisce about other places that you've been since you've left Michigan, that would be fine too, just to give us a little sense of what is different about institutional context once you leave Michigan. So. Dyron, you want to start us off?
Sure, I'll start. Thanks again for organizing this program. Is this on? Okay. Let's see, as Matt mentioned, graduated from U of M in 2008, and I quickly accepted a position at Albion College. At Albion College. Actually, mine is a little bit unusual in the sense that Albion is only about 50 minutes away from here, and I would take many trips to Chicago and never see this place anywhere on the map. And I would imagine most people it doesn't register in any way, and it certainly was a case for me. So when I accepted this job at Albion, I quickly had to look at the map and figure out where the hell it was, and then sort of move from there. And upon visiting the campus, a small liberal arts college, I'm somewhat representing, I guess, the resident liberal arts representative for this panel here, and fell in love with it because I came to Michigan to teach. That is the reason why I pursued a PhD, but of course got redirected towards research as a research institution, and so it was somewhat difficult for me to accept this position because of the pressure that I received from faculty who guided me along this research path. But the college is a really small college in a small town, and it certainly doesn't have the life of Ann Arbor. And so that was a major adjustment for me, but because it was so close to Ann Arbor and East Lansing and Kalamazoo and Battle Creek, it was a nice place to be because I had many options to go to if I needed some leisure time. But the academic life was really great there because I had a lot of reason or a lot of opportunity to explore any kind of research project or teaching course that I wanted without too much interference. That is, it gave me a wide berth to pursue a lot of different things. I'll say a lot more, but the campus itself is really small, but it still has a big life to it in the sense that most of my colleagues are really engaged in research and are traveling a lot and going on conferences and on that sort of conference research wheel.
Hi. Oh my. So Eastern Michigan, I would bet most of you are familiar with. It's 6 miles away. It is large. There are 20,000 students there, primarily undergraduate. About 6,000 of those are graduate students, mostly masters. There are a few PhD students in certain departments, such as psychology has a PhD program. In biology, where I'm at, it's just a master's, so we have undergraduates and master's students. This is my 5th year at Eastern, so in Eastern's progress, this is my year that I go up for tenure. I am in the midst of preparing my tenure packet, so if you'd like to know more about that, I'd be happy to talk about that at some point. But my teaching and research are split about 50-50, and service is piled on top of that.
50-50.
50-50-50 is exactly right. Yes, and it is very enjoyable. Eastern, as a regional comprehensive university, serves a very broad variety of students, from students that are underprepared to students that are as good as what you would have here at the University of Michigan. So the classes are very varied. My teaching is primarily introductory biology and cellular biology, and I have alternating semesters of those. The research lab that I run, I have, let me think, 9 students right now in my lab. So it's a very active, vibrant lab, NIH funded through an R15. Eastern support for research is strong, although not very well funded. So there's a lot of enthusiasm there for research. You are required to do research for tenure. But the support there is, there are some internal grants, they're very small. You're really expected to get external funding if you want to be successful in doing research at Eastern. There's lots and lots of support for great teaching. There's a wonderful faculty development center that I've made full use of, and lots of support in the department as well, lots of mentorship and things like that. So. Prior to coming to Eastern, I did 1 year at a small liberal arts institution. That was Shaw University. It's in Raleigh, North Carolina. It's a historically Black university. So it was a really exciting year, gave me a lot of experience in teaching. I'll stop there for now.
Okay, thanks for the invitation to be here with you today. My name is Doug Rogers. I finished at University of Michigan Anthropology in 2004. And I went from there to a 2-year teaching-focused postdoctoral fellowship at Miami University in Ohio. So I was teaching there almost as much as a junior faculty member would have been, 2 courses a semester. I got 1 course off each semester for working on research. Miami University is a part of the Ohio state system, but pretends not to be. It bills itself very much as a liberal arts teaching-focused environment within state system, so there was a large emphasis on teaching there and on undergraduate life. I was there for 2 years. In the second year, they ran a faculty search in my general field and hired me. So I was an assistant professor there for 1 year. They were not, however, able to come up with an arrangement that worked for my family. And so I stayed on the job market, and then in the next year had an offer to go to Yale, which worked much better for my family, and we went. I say that because in this context, I think it's important to emphasize that I did not end up at a research university because I was hell-bent on getting to one. This is the path that worked best for me, and if I look back at my cohort of graduate students, people are finding fulfilling careers in research and teaching and other things at a wide variety of institutions, and I think that's important to keep in mind as you look at your own sort of prospects and around at your colleagues who you're finishing up at Michigan with. Yale is a very different environment than Miami University of Ohio was. It bills itself, as you may have heard, as a elite research university. It has very high research expectations for its faculty. It also places a significant emphasis on teaching, although if you're a bad teacher, it probably won't ruin your promotion or tenure chances. I've been at Yale now for 7 years. Yale has a very extended tenure clock in which it keeps people in the junior ranks because it wants to be absolutely sure that the people it tenures are the people it wants to tenure. So I will be up for my tenure review next year in my 8th year there, which is very late in comparison to most places. I am, however, an associate professor. Yale, along with a couple of other places, has this odd status of associate professor without tenure in order to be as selective as it wants to be. So I'm happy to talk in the conversation about what it's been like to be at either of those kinds of institutions or the sort of trajectory between them.
So thank you. We have some context now. It'd be interesting to hear what was the adjustment like for you? And particularly, how is faculty life different from graduate student life in your perspectives?
I'll start with this one. Obviously, when you are making the adjustment from spending countless of hours just dissertating, where you have the luxury of being able to devote all of that time to that, you're going to make a major sort of shift in the classroom in which all your time gets directed towards preparing you for your classes. That was a major adjustment for me.
What's your teaching load?
It's a 3-3, so 3 courses per semester.
And are those 3 separate preps that you're doing? Or?
3 separate preps. You can on occasion do 1 prep, but because of the size of the institution and the size of the department, Albion has about 2,000 students, real small class size, consequently of maximum of about 25 students if it is for an introductory level course, but averaging between 10 to 12 for all other courses. So it gives great opportunity for discussion, but you have to be really prepared to lead those discussions, and that means a lot of prep time as well. And so I put a lot of energy into that preparation. It was quite productive and fruitful in the end, but nonetheless, it was a major shift. And obviously, the other shift is trying to squeeze out some research while you're, really focusing on preparing these classes. I think once you get that first year under your belt, you have a repertoire of classes that you can draw on, and that makes it a lot easier for subsequent years.
Did you two find that as well, that first year was a major adjustment and things sort of smooth out some?
I thought so too, yeah. That first year was very tough. The mentorship that I got at Eastern was really important for making it through. I found that the hardest transition for me was figuring out how to do both teaching and research at the same time and do both of them very well at the same time. I was able to do great at research as a postdoc. I did this year at Shaw University. I could really focus on teaching. Actually, I also had a teaching postdoc. Spire through the UNC Chapel Hill it's a postdoc that combines teaching and research, so that's how I got to do both. But I didn't really have to do them simultaneously, and that was tough. I'm getting much better at it. I'm consolidating my teaching schedule on certain days of the week and leaving whole days open for research. I also wrote into my NIH grant money for a technician. And that's allowed me to not be in the lab full-time with every student. Once I initially train a student, I can let them run with the technician. So a couple of things that really made a difference.
Yeah, these points sound very familiar. The only thing I would add is that, you know, as a faculty member, you end up in a fundamentally different place within the institution. You are, as a graduate student, learning how to do research and doing research and learning how to teach and doing teaching, but when you become a faculty member, your colleagues are no longer your cohort of graduate students who are sort of one group and here's the faculty. You are part of a faculty group that is probably spread out from first-year people like yourself through people who are on the verge of retirement. You have a voice in and some responsibility for the entire curriculum in your department and maybe in the college or university. You have a role in governance. You have an entirely different corner of the institution to navigate yourself to tenure, or what counts as good teaching here, or what do they want me to do, or what is my role in this university as a whole. Fundamentally different than the sort of learning what it's like to do research or teach as a graduate student. So while you're balancing all these things, I absolutely agree, you're also in a fundamentally different place within the university.
Add one more thing.
Yes, absolutely.
We talk about the academic side of this, but there's also the personal side, and that is making that adjustment in a different community or space. Since Albion is only 50 minutes away, I didn't feel it as if I was forfeiting anything because I could quickly escape and go to other places if I wanted a more vibrant lifestyle. Consequently, I found myself back at Ann Arbor frequently for recreational purposes. But it's a small, very intimate campus and intimate community in Albion. It's really nice because you get to know people quite well and readily, but at the same time it can be somewhat claustrophobic because people really interfere and get into each other's lives in some way. And that takes its own amount of negotiating. But I would say that when you're thinking about going to any institution, look at the sort of the community life, not just the campus life, but the space that you're going to be, spending most of your sort of day-to-day life in.
It's interesting. It's what I think someone at Kalamazoo College called the fishbowl complex. That there's always, people know what you're doing, and students have expectations of you as well.
Expectations to be on campus and attending a lot of events if you're living in the city as I am.
At all hours, right?
I wanted to follow up on something, Doug, that you said about having a voice as a faculty member, and that's something that for junior faculty, to what extent, some of what people say about you have to be careful what you say, and how much of a voice do you really have as a new faculty member, and I wonder if you have any advice or any insights about that, any of you, what that transition was like, and how do you develop that voice as a faculty member?
So we're going right to the hard questions now, right? This is like round two really hard questions. This is a 20-point question. I would say that is a matter of great institutional diversity, and that one of your first tasks is, I think this is a good question, right? And so now you have a voice for part of this, but what actually does that look like in practice? It varies widely. In some places, at Miami, I was a postdoc, not even an official member of the department. I was invited to come to faculty meetings. I was invited to participate in curriculum design, and people were really interested in, like, if I had ideas for coming up with a new way to teach Anthropology 101. In most departments at Yale, junior faculty don't say that much, in comparison to Miami. So where you fall on that spectrum, or where your institution falls on that spectrum, is a matter for you to sort of find out and to do research on, both actively in asking other junior faculty members or other senior faculty members, or just sort of being and watching and thinking and being sensitive to the environment you're in. You will get sort of cues about what is the appropriate level or the appropriate ways in which you can participate. And and sort of navigate your way through it.
I think you're right that it's very institution specific and even department specific.
Right.
So yeah, so knowing, joining a new faculty and trying to figure out who do you interact with to get the support you need, what kinds of things should you suggest. I thought that the mentor system that I had set up for me was the most helpful in navigating that. I was assigned officially one of the other junior faculty as a mentor. And he had been there for about 4 years. We met for lunch every other week. We often just would take our bag lunches and go sit outside somewhere so our conversation would be somewhat semi-private. And I could really ask all those questions about, what's this course really taught like? And can I manipulate that content? And what does this committee really do? And where do the indirect costs go that come into the department? All of those things that I wanted to know, I got to ask. So a mentor was really the key for me.
The first year I was at Albion, I asked that question, so what's my role and how deeply should I be involved in all affairs related to the department and to the college? And the response I got was, how much rope do you want? Because you can somewhat be responsible for hanging yourself if you get too involved. And Albion gave me plenty of opportunity to get involved as much as I wanted to in student life and the department, programming that is developing new courses, sort of recrafting existing courses, involvement in committee meetings and different sort of committees. And so it was pretty much do as much as you want, but be equally responsible and accountable in the sense that at the end of the day, you're going to be evaluated on, what your overall sort of contribution has been. And a word about that, Albion, and I imagine this is the case for all institutions, that we get evaluated largely for tenure purposes, but also for any kind of merit bonuses or the like. It would be teaching and service to students is one, service to your department, service to the campus-wide community, and sort of curriculum. And so, and finally, research and what is it maybe called sort of faculty development. And so all of these things are critical in how one secures tenure, but those committee responsibilities, particularly if you're thinking about service to the campus and service to students, can consume a fair amount of time, and you have to know your balance and the limits.
I wanted to pursue the mentoring topic that's come up a couple of times and ask you, how did you get the mentoring that you needed? Was it provided? Did you go after it? How did that work? I know, Doug, you wanted to sort of jump in on that some.
Yeah, I think, as Ann said, it's a crucial thing, and it's great that many universities and colleges of all kinds have instituted formal mentoring systems for junior faculty. However, it sounds like you've had terrific mentoring, and I've had very good mentoring at various points as well. But I've collected enough stories to know that it's not always the case. Institutions are good at setting up a system, but they're very bad at seeing whether it's working or monitoring whether the mentoring is actually working. You're getting good mentoring when you get stories like Ann's, right? Where somebody is able to meet the faculty member where they are, know what their experience is, and then help them adapt that experience to the sort of expectations that are given by that institution. So if you've had this kind of teaching experience, maybe you want to think about this. This is where you are in your book. You might want to think about publishing this article or the book at this point. If you need a big research grant, here's some tools for it. So that's good mentoring. Medium or sort of benevolent neglect mentoring is quite common, which is you're doing fine, you look great, we all love you. Frequently you find mentors not really knowing what to do, but telling you what they did, plus what they forgot to do, plus what their friend did and friend forgot to do, and you leave the meeting with this giant list of things that may not bear any resemblance to your situation and has no real concrete ways in which you can help move along in the institution. And then there are very rare cases of mentoring where it's basically hazing or bullying, and that's not really useful at all. Rare, but you hear some things. So that being the case, that there's a range of mentoring, you need to think of mentoring as an active process. You need to look for multiple mentors. If you have an assigned mentor, that's great. See how that goes. You may gather all sorts of information informally from other people, other junior people, other more advanced people, people outside the department, people inside the department. Look, ask questions. If someone says to you, what you need to get tenure here is these 4 things, well, don't just walk away and decide you're going to do those 4 things. Think about how you get there. Was the last person who got tenure, was that what they had, or the person before that? If you're at a small place, you can go to the dean of faculty and say, I hear I need to do this. What kinds of ways can this institution help me do that? Can I rearrange my teaching? Can you help me with summer research? It's an active seeking process. That's when it's worked best for me, when I have multiple people I'm consulting with and hearing their stories and piecing it together with where I am in my own particular life. Multiple mentors, active menteeship, I think, or so, the state of being a mentee is not a passive state.
And it sounds like a research process in some ways.
It is a research process.
You're having to check the sources, you're having to
Sure.
filter the information, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
And the idea of seeking out additional mentors, that really, it is on you. Even though I got one assigned, I also, in the second year, sought out someone that was doing research in chemistry. And this person's research program was organized sort of like mine was going to be, or that I hoped it would be. And I wanted to know, how does she do that? So we set up a bi-weekly coffee, and we meet early in the morning just to talk about research. And it spans to other things. But again, that active seeking, active questioning, finding someone doing things that you want to be able to do, and making that relationship happen. That was important.
I didn't have a mentor assigned to me, nor did anyone ask to be my mentor. And largely because it's a small institution in which people are just really busy, and you'd find it at large institutions too, and they just really, if you can plug away on your own without any support externally, then by all means do so. That said, I actually relied on my dissertation chair, who was also my advisor through my whole doctoral experience. And he was extremely helpful in mentoring me into this next level. In the political science department, John C. Campbell was my advisor and dissertation chair, and so he assisted me actually in crafting out, my next research project. We talked it through, but then I subsidized that with, peers within my department and outside of the department, as both Ann and Doug mentioned, sort of actively seeking answers from other people, advice from other people. But don't be afraid to utilize, existing advisors that you have. They're probably going to be very helpful in helping you with the transition. I think also finding someone who's an ally, you're going to need to try to pick your support network very carefully, but finding allies and people who are going to give you good advice just instead of some random advice that may not be very useful. I think it's very prudent to think about.
I think there's a great message here of casting a wide net for mentoring, that you shouldn't forget where you've come from, and as well as all the resources that you might have on campus for you. Another topic that I've heard several of you raise is this idea of juggling. You have to balance, and I'm wondering, how do you do that? How do you figure out the balance between teaching and research or service, and then also the balance so that you can still have a personal life while you're doing all that? So what advice do you have about balance?
Sorry, did you say personal life?
Exactly.
Moving on to the next question.
Balance.
So we can start with the easier one, the academic balance, if that's easier.
I'll jump in at least. Recently, what I've done is consolidate my teaching. onto, as much as possible, Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's been great. I do all my teaching and all my office hours on those 2 days a week, and then Monday and Wednesday, I really am in the lab. I'm with my lab students. Friday is a bit of a toss-up where I'm at and what I'm doing, a lot of service. But that has been a big help for me. I work best in long blocks of time, so that's been good. And that involves working a little bit with your chair and the department to organize those courses to be at the time you want them, those kinds of things. So.
And it was, you could raise those discussions. That was
I
considered
could.
okay.
Yes, yes. And in fact, maybe brazenly so, in my first year at Eastern, I asked to move my second semester course to a different day. So here I was teaching in the fall semester, I'm teaching Anthropobio in the winter semester coming up, and I'd really rather have it on Tuesday, Thursday instead of Monday, Wednesday. And this is 200 students that I'm asking about moving the day for, and maybe it was just inexperience and not knowing what I was asking for, but I asked to move it, and it happened. So it can happen.
Yeah, I mean, I would say knowing and developing a sense of your own work rhythms and then making your actual schedule look like that. You know, if you need long time in the lab, then, you know, actually having a strategy for getting that. Or if you write best in short chunks or long days, you know that about yourself and make your teaching schedule fit that way. The other strategy I would mention for juggling these things is for finding ways that teaching and research reinforce each other. Finding ways in which what you're talking about or lecturing about or involving your students in the classroom also informs your own research, even if it's in a way that you can sort of help understand something by lecturing about it, to explain it, or many places, particularly liberal arts colleges, are very interested in projects that involve students in faculty research. This is terrific. It helps me, this kind of thing helps me with the juggling. Because it allows lots of crossovers between the teaching and research thing. I draw a lot of energy from, and ideas, and interest from teaching on topics that are of interest to me. And that, you know, I can go home from a good class and sit down much more inspired to write than I was on the day that I had dedicated to writing instead of teaching. So those links help. They're not necessarily discrete objects that you're juggling.
Yeah, just adding to that, you know, it is about, you know, killing multiple birds with one stone, if you can. And I would say equally, if you can partner with someone, I actually had the opportunity, and again, liberal arts gives you that sort of creativity and flexibility to be able to co-teach. And so that, in many ways, will sort of break up that time that you would have planning a course. It takes a lot of energy from the start, but once you sort of find your pace and rhythm, it's easy to do. Where you have, in my case, it was interdisciplinary course, and we spread, you know, the burden of teaching between the two of us. We shared that. And so that's a way of sort of stealing additional time. Like Ann mentioned, if you have the luxury of being able to control when your classes are taught, then that's really good. I, like Ann, have that luxury of being able to say, I'm teaching only these days at these particular times. And not everyone is afforded that kind of luxury. I would probably say, too, that you can sometimes negotiate, depending on your teaching load, to say if you're doing a 2-2 load or 2-3 load or whatever, to say, let me teach, let's just say you're doing a 2-2 load, that is 2 courses per semester. Can I teach a, 1-3 load? And that way that frees up even more time for you to pursue your research project or whatever. So these are some of the other options that you can play with that frequently are available to you.
So thinking a little bit outside the box about what works for you. Any thoughts on the work-life balance? If we can come back to that, the ways that you keep yourself energized, that you have time for things outside of the job. Do you have to carve that out for yourself? Do you put limits on what you do? How does that work?
It's kind of impossible to leave your work behind. I mean, you're always thinking, and that's sort of the life of an academic in some way. And so I think you really do have to structure your day where you can say, I'm not going to turn this off because it's impossible, but I'm going to direct my energy to other things, be it some social outlet or going to the gym to exercise or watching a video or something like that, or just hanging out with friends.
I think the carving it out is important. I've really been so I had a baby born about 1.5 years ago now, and now I am really good about the time that I spend in the office, I'm really productive with. So I've been very dedicated toward, I'm going to limit myself to, I have a lecture coming up tomorrow, I'm going to start it the day before. It's a lecture I've given before, so I need to just revamp it some, right? So, but I don't allow myself to start that lecture 3 days ahead of when I'm going to give it, because then I'll spend 3 days doing it, because I like to teach and I want to think about that lecture and have a lot of fun with it. So I've really set limits on when I start things, and put times in my calendar that I'm going to spend doing it. And then I make dedicated time on weekends to spend with family. I try really hard not to bring mountains of work home with me, so that I really do spend time with family. It's tough.
Yeah, it's difficult, and particularly with email and students' willingness to email you at any time of the day or night, particularly the night, it can be very hard not to wake up at whatever time you wake up in the morning and turn your email, and immediately you're swamped by whatever happened at 3 in the morning to your students and the assignment for the next day. So, yeah, I mean, I agree that some active strategizing about ways in which you're going to turn off that part of your life, whether it's weekends or evenings or sort of negotiated in the context of other family members or kids, I think that's very important. And equally important is just a sense of perspective. Both teaching and research can be all consuming, either one of them. And it's important to have a sort of spot that you feel comfortable with to stand outside and think that these are parts of my life that are going on, and I'm in control of them, they're not in control of me, and that may be exercise for some people, or it may be reading mystery novels or whatever, but just the sense of stepping outside of the kinds of categories and expectations that the institution is constantly bombarding you with is a useful strategy to cultivate. Again, actively cultivate.
You all are smart people, in that statement, work smart certainly applies here, in which, don't give yourself free time to sort of pursue it, set, as Ann mentioned, specific sort of parameters on how much time you're going to dedicate to something, and then give yourself the license to take a break from it.
My favorite phrase about that is, work is like a gas. It expands to fill the space you give it. And oh, it's so true.
Spoken like a true scientist. Absolutely.
Biology.
Well, we are at the end of our session here, and I want to thank you so much for coming here and sharing the wisdom of your practice and your experience. I know you'll be involved in sessions throughout the day. And so join me in thanking our panelists today.